will introduce our speakers in a moment, but I just have a few housekeeping matters to run through first. Everybody is on mute. Encourage you to keep your microphone on mute. If you've got any questions, please use the chat function, and I'll endeavour to work through those questions as we work through the session, but we also allow time for Q&A at the end. We've got a nice group on today, so I'm more than happy to also allow people to come off mute once you've posted that question to you. This session is also being recorded. And will be sent out to everybody post this in our email, as well as the details of our speakers today. On to our said speakers. Today we have Nick Mercure and Stephen Cook from Flow Power. Nick is a Senior Business Development Manager for Energy Solutions, and Stephen is the Senior Client Solutions Manager for Energy Solutions. Both have really extensive experience in the energy industry and customer service, and we thank you both for joining us today and sharing your knowledge on such an important topic on the rising costs of energy. Welcome, Nick and Stephen.
Hey, Kathy, thanks very much for having us.
Thank you. Hi, Stephen.
Thanks for having us along.
You're welcome. Perhaps just to start us off, I've obviously just done a slight introduction to you both, but if you could tell us a little bit about yourselves and typically the work you do for Flow Power, just to set the scene for our audience today.
Maybe, Nick, do you want to go first? Maybe you could talk a little bit about Flow Power as well, and background of the company.
Yeah, certainly. Okay, so I've been in energy for about 10 years. Previously, I worked for a major vertically integrated retailer and did a variety of different roles, including energy efficiency, solar, power factor correction, LED lighting upgrade, large market gas and electricity contracting, and EVs, batteries. Covered a fair spectrum of things in my multiple roles at that retailer. I've moved across to Flow Power because their view on the market and the changes that need to occur in the market was in line with my personal views. And I've been with Flow Power for just over 3 years now, and certainly have enjoyed the move. It's been really exciting. We're a very innovative retailer. We're quite small, but we're doing some pretty amazing things, and we have a great deal of transparency. It's a pretty strong part of the ethos of our organisation. We also work really closely with our customers to develop solutions that are bespoke for them. We're rich in I guess high-profile customers, but we're still quite small in regards to how much load we manage. In relation to the load that's in the national electricity market. So Flow Power's been around for over 20 years now. Started as a consultancy business. Matthew van der Linden started the business by helping his father, Bill, who was general manager of a large manufacturing organisation when the energy market was deregulated. Bill came to Matthew and said, "Oh, what's this? I don't understand any of this. What's going on? I'm paying way more than I used to. This is ridiculous." Matthew had a look into it, found a tariff opportunity and requested to change the tariff through the retailer and saved his dad a large amount of money. And his dad went around telling all his CEO and general manager friends, and basically that's how the business started. And from there, it's grown progressively over the years. In 2008, I believe it was, we got a retail license. That wasn't necessarily something we intended to do, but a major customer of Utilicore, which was the company's name at the time, called Olam, couldn't get an energy offer from anyone in the market. And the only solution that Matthew could come up with was for him to purchase a wholesale electricity license and sell them electricity direct through the wholesale market with a transparent margin. Olam were happy with that, and that started our journey in the retailing space. Then in 2017 or 2018, a large Canadian superannuation investment fund called OP Trust purchased a share in the business, and since then we've rebranded to Flow Power, and we've been on a fairly aggressive growth projectile or growth curve, I guess is probably the best description. And yeah, we've sold the first publicly listed commercial power purchase agreement into the market, blending wind and solar for a customer. And that's something we've sort of been at the forefront of. So we're very strong on providing customers with 100% renewable agreements. Probably some of the more well-known customers we do that for would be Sydney Opera House, Carlton United Breweries, and then you've got locally, you've probably got Jacobs Creek, which is owned by Pernod Ricard, which is a major wine manufacturer in the Barossa Valley. And then you've got places like Matthews Hospitality, City of Adelaide Council, Flinders Ports. They're just some of the sort of major customers that have partnered with us for long-term energy agreements. You're talking sort of 8 to 10-year agreements. So there's a great deal of trust that goes into a long-term partnership like that.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I really appreciate you setting the scene and providing a bit more background to Flow Power and particularly your level of knowledge. And thank you also, Stephen, for being on the session as well. Obviously, we do and people on our call know, we collect our data from operators and what's called our tourism barometer report. And the latest report really showed the rising costs. We found that the rising costs of business that they're really facing for it's the biggest challenge they're facing at the moment for 2/3 of tourism businesses. And energy is no exception to those costs that are rising at the moment. So perhaps can we just begin this session on educating us and telling us why energy costs have increased so much?
Yeah, sure. Oh, maybe I'll take this one and give Nick a bit of a rest. So look, maybe I'll just cover off on my role a little bit more as well.
Sorry.
No problem. So look, I'm a senior client services manager, and I'm actually based in the Barossa Valley. So Nick and I are both based in South Australia, so that gives us a local flavour. I look after probably the larger customers in South Australia, but it is one thing that's a little bit different about Flow Power. All of our customers have a dedicated client services manager, so everybody's got somebody who they can just pick up the phone and contact them directly. So it does set us a little bit apart from a lot of the other energy providers. So
Stephen, do you do that for no matter what size the client is? So an SME client too, so obviously the Jacobs Creek, the Pernod Ricards of the world?
That's right. Yes, all of our customers have somebody direct. If you're with a larger customer, you've actually got to be a significant another retailer, you've got to be a significant customer before a client services manager, and it does make a difference. Being based in South Australia, quite often we do try and catch up with our customers quite regularly, and meet them across the desk face to face. We have a very good client retention rate with Flow Power. So I think it's up around, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but it's about 95 to 98% every year, and most of our customers have been with us for a long period of time. They don't tend to move on. So yeah, no, it's about forming long-term relationships with our customers.
No, and that's why we love you having you part of our community too, because it's nice to have someone to pick up the phone to and speak to, actually a person at the end.
Just quickly, Kathy, just in regards to retention rates. So basically 70% is considered very high within our industry sector. If a retailer manages to retain 60% of their commercial industrial business, they're generally cracking bottles of champagne and celebrating. 70% is considered very high. So the fact that we're consistently over 95% is a real testament to the work and the value that Stephen and his team provide for our customers.
That's amazing, and I think it goes down to the fact of those one-on-one relationships are so powerful, and it's what business needs. We can't be experts in every aspect of our business, so it's having those specialists on the end of the phone to be able to connect and talk with and for advice and guidance. So yeah, circling back to Stephen, that point, energy costs, why have they increased so much?
Yeah, sure. Look, there's a lot of factors that have come into play, and it's really just sort of there's been a lot of synergies between them. If you look back, there's been energy stress in the northern hemisphere and Europe for a couple of years now, so that's sort of probably set the scene. The war in Ukraine really hammered things home, and so the international price of gas and coal has sort of gone through the roof. So that is driving a lot of it. Some of the other factors that have come into play is a wet winter. The coal was hard to extract, so the price went up, and it was burning with less intensity as well. So the output of the coal-fired power plants was down. We've got an aging coal generators infrastructure. So they're starting to have sort of extended outages for maintenance, and so this all came to a bit of a head in May. We haven't seen the escalation in pricing ever, so it's it was something that the energy market hadn't experienced before, and it got to the stage where the operators of the market actually suspended the market. Now that hasn't happened before, and that was in all states right across the NEM. And that because prices in the wholesale market had reached set trigger points, and there was a lot of loss of confidence in the market. So the generators weren't willing to enter contracts, and so it made it very hard for a lot of the retailers to actually trade through that period.
Interesting. So what can we expect to see ahead? Will are we still on the increase for pricing? What does that mean for, obviously businesses and their bills with the rising cost of power, or energy, should I say? What does the forecast look like for the future?
Right. Well, the market seems to have peaked, and
right.
There's a bit of confidence coming back into it. So we are through the peak of winter demand as well. So there's a bit more renewables going into the system. So the wholesale market is sort of stabilised, a little bit more confidence, but sort of the underlying problems haven't gone away. The international prices are still quite high. So while it's come off its peak, forward prices are still predicted to remain higher for the longer term.
Okay, then interesting. So obviously you've identified, sort of why it's going up, and we know some of those factors are completely out of our control. What could we be doing, even if the market has peaked? We don't know if that's going to stay there or if it's going to go down. It's still one of the biggest costs in doing business is energy costs. What are some things our businesses and our community can be doing in response to prices to help reduce costs?
I'm happy to take that one, Steve.
You go ahead.
I mean, look, the reality is you want to try and be as efficient as you can on site. There's a variety of different programs that are available for state and federal government funding that you can get access to get some co-contribution towards delivering some efficiency on site. And sort of your low-hanging fruits, things like LED lighting upgrades. Look, solar, if you haven't got solar yet, that's absolutely worth a look right now. If you're a large market energy consumer, power factor correction, something that if you need it is something that should be addressed. So I mean, realistically, you want to try and reduce the amount of energy that you use as much as you can, and then it's just a matter of if you're a small market consumer, you're reasonably well protected because the market operator puts in place what's called a direct market offer, and retailers can only go a certain amount above that. So the actual costs to the retailer isn't quite is much higher than what the direct market offer is at the moment. So the small to medium enterprise customers currently, their bills have gone up, and that's painful. It hasn't gone up as much as it could have if they were more closely aligned to the market through a commercial and industrial electricity contract or a large market contract. So look, if you're small to medium enterprise, pick up the phone, call your retailer, tell them that you don't want to pay that rate. You've got an offer from another retailer of 15% discount, and you're gonna move across if they can't do something to match it. There's a federal government website you can go to. If you just Google that, compare prices, that's a good opportunity as well, just to have a look at different offers that are out in the market. It is a little bit problematic in the market at the moment. There's been quite a few small to medium retailers that have gone into receivership because they haven't properly hedged their customers. So they've gone into some pretty serious financial hardship. So there aren't as many retail offers available, but certainly pick up the phone and make your retailer aware that you can get a better price somewhere else. And 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to go, oh yeah, look, hey, I've just had a look at your account. We can put you on this offer, and it's going to be better than what you're on. So that's probably the most important thing. I'm happy to share an Excel spreadsheet that I've put together. That just allows, it's really basic, just allows you to enter a cent per kilowatt hour rate, a daily supply charge, and a discount percentage. And you can put multiple different retailers' values in there, and then it just gives you what the cost would be if you consumed 100 kilowatt hours over a period. And that'll give you an easy way to compare all these different values and work out what's actually going to get you the best outcome. So I'll forward that through to you, Kath, after this.
That would be great.
Yeah.
We'll share that as part of that email that we send out to everybody post this as well.
Yeah, awesome. Did you want to add anything, Stephen?
Yeah, no, the only thing that I would say is that a lot of people probably haven't really sort of experienced the high prices in the market at the moment because they'd be on existing retail contracts. So it's not until people go to renewal that they'll really sort of realise how much prices have moved. One thing that people can do is, rather than just wait till the end of their contract, look ahead. The further out you can buy your energy or enter into a contract, generally you get a better deal. And we have a lot of products where you can buy 2 or 3 years ahead at set prices, and we even have market following prices, so that if the market recedes, we can actually track that price lower with the market in the meantime. So there's a lot of strategies there. No,
thank you. Nick, you mentioned the terms large market energy consumer and a small market energy consumer. For the case of educating our audience today, what's the difference between how would I deem myself if I'm an accommodation operator? How would I deem my consumption that I'm a large? Because you don't know what you don't know if you haven't seen other businesses' energy bills. How would I know if I'm a large or more of a small? Because it might not be reflective of how I consider myself as a business either.
No, absolutely.
Is that correct?
Yeah. I've met lots of customers who consider their spend on electricity to be, very significant. But in the broader spectrum of the variety of customers that exist in the South Australian market, they're actually really quite small. So the reality is that the threshold is set by the energy regulator, and it's currently 160 megawatt hours per annum, which probably sounds like just a bunch of numbers. That translates in kilowatt hours, which is something that people see on their bills, as 160,000 kilowatt hours per annum. Okay, but probably the easiest gauge is if your spend per month on electricity is between $3,500 and $5,000 per month. So if it's a quarterly billing cycle, you'd need to be spending more like 15. But if it's around that mark for a month, then there's a likelihood you're going to be somewhere near that threshold. In South Australia, if you have multiple NMIs,
what does that mean?
So NMI is just basically it's a national meter identifier, which basically just means it's a point of entry where you receive electricity from the network.
Okay.
So some businesses will have, say, 3 or 4 different NMIs across their site. I've seen a couple of caravan parks that are like that. So if you can actually aggregate, not physically, but just theoretically for contracting purposes, you can aggregate those NMIs to bring you above the threshold and allow you to contract in a commercial and industrial or a large market electricity contract. Probably the main difference that people really need to be aware of is that when you enter into a commercial and industrial or a large market electricity contract, you are deemed to be a sophisticated consumer of electricity, and you would lose the ability to reach out to the electricity ombudsman. So I don't necessarily think that's a big deal personally, because most retailers are more than willing to work with their customers to resolve any issues, but it's just something that's worth bearing in mind.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously we've identified, what's driving the price of energy costs at the moment. And Stephen, you said, you shared with us that the market's probably peaked in terms of pricing. However, that's most businesses probably aren't experiencing the peak of those prices at the moment, and that will come as they enter as energy contract renewals come about, depending on where you're contracted at. And it's important to start looking ahead to ensure you're going to get the best possible deal, give yourself ample time to shop around as such. We've referred to retail and wholesale. What's the difference if I'm a small accommodation property that primarily most of my users are the guests in my rooms, and so there's probably potential ways I can look to, and I've probably already implemented some small measures to cut energy. But in terms of, and that might be, room key cards that come out when they leave the room, and, your power goes off and things like that. But there's still ongoing supply that's being serviced to that property. What are discussions I should be having if I am, purchasing? What's the difference between retail versus wholesale? I'm not educated in this by any means. You understand, because your clients are the same. They're business operators focused on running their business, and they're, and as well as, they're doing their business and operationally, but focusing on the running of it sometimes slips below the radar. So, I understand there's the retailers, but what's the wholesale market, and can I access that, or do I need to be a large market energy consumer as such?
Yeah, sure. So
probably a big long-winded question there. I'm so sorry.
Yes, it is, and we might double team on this one, because there's a lot of information, a lot of ways of looking at this. So all of our customers at FlowPower have some exposure to the wholesale market, because what we are trying to do is transition customers to the new market. So the new market is in the new electricity market. Is quite different than the traditional peak and off peak that you get from a traditional retailer, where your peak in the middle of the day is most expensive, where in the wholesale market, because of renewables, particularly in South Australia, it's actually the cheapest time of the day in the market to buy electricity.
Right.
So there's a disconnect between traditional retail and what's happening in the wholesale market. But we try and, the way that we've designed our products is that we give the customers the benefit of the cheaper pricing during the middle of the day. So I suppose to look at that a little bit more, if you're exposed to the wholesale market, we are buying out of the wholesale market on your behalf and passing that price in the market on an every 5-minute interval. So we're looking at how much you use in that interval, what the price is in the interval, and that can give you a significant advantage in pricing, rather than just being locked into a peak and off peak. Doesn't matter what time of day or time of day within those peak and off peaks you're using it, you're going to be charged exactly the same price.
And Stephen, would that be a traditional retail agreement locked into a peak and off peak versus working with a wholesaler? Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Yep. So for our customers who have the ability to manipulate their load, it gives them a big advantage. Say, we've got a lot of customers who are irrigators or wineries and different cold stores, for instance. So they can work out what time of day they're going to use it. So they take out the advantage of the very cheap pricing in the middle of the day, or in the middle of the night, and they get a price that's well below what you would be able to buy on a retail contract. So we also have what we call our Power Active product, where we're buying futures contracts at a set base price, but we also have added a bit of shape to that. So again, if the customer is able to sort of change the shape of the load, or say a traditional retailer, for instance, will look at the customer shape anyway, and that would be built in. So it's happening behind the scenes that they don't really get to see. We believe in transparency with our pricing, so the customer knows what the base price contract is, what their load shape is, and then what our margin is. So we're very transparent, with our margin, so they know what we're getting out of it. And then that doesn't change. So if we can pass a cheaper rate on to the customer, they get full advantage of that. It's not like maybe a traditional retailer who sell at a set price. If they can buy electricity cheaper in the market, so they get the added bonus of that, and they get added profit.
Well, it's probably quite a smart thing to do then, Stephen. No matter what and I'm obviously referring it to the tourism industry, no matter what my business operations is, if I'm a accommodation operator where most of my demand for energy might be happening of an evening, or even if I'm operating an attraction that's getting more visitation during the day, and then obviously, requiring more energy to run my attraction, there is definitely merit in exploring wholesale energy rates as a measure of potentially reducing my energy costs, because I could buy them at a different price. And particularly like when you look at an accommodation operator of an evening, that you're probably under a retail agreement, potentially, correct me if I'm wrong, buying at a peak price.
Yeah. So we don't advocate that all of our customers go to wholesale, but we do have sort of a mix of a range of products. So what we do is look at the customer's profile, their historical profile over the last 12 months. So we get a sort of feel for the size of their usage, the time of their usage, the nature of their business, and then we make a recommendation what product they're best suited to. All of them have a little bit of exposure in some way to the wholesale market, and that gives them the advantage if they can. And we work with the customers to try and change their load shape, because you get to a point where you try and save as much electricity as you can. You do the things that Nick's talked about, where you look at solar, you do your lighting upgrades, you upgrade your refrigeration or your air conditioning, but you're using a certain amount of electricity. Now, the other change that you can make is what time of day you use that electricity. And that gives you a much better pricing outcome. Now, accommodation is probably one of those hard things, because it depends when the customers are going to be there. And, we take that into account. We've got a lot of customers who are maybe large hotel groups. They have a very flat, predictable usage profile. That doesn't change. So, we can give them with pretty good certainty what their price outcome is going to be. They've done very well out of the market.
Okay. And my other question is renewable energy. This is, it's the way of the future. And what are options for contracting renewable energy for our own? It obviously has an environmental footprint. It's about reducing that, but it's also, about cost as well. What are the options around renewable energy? Can that lower our pricing? Is it available? What other contracting options available for renewable energy?
Do you want to go, Nick? Yep.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways you can do that with flow power, and there's a couple of different ways you can do that with most retailers. We have engaged with renewable generators across all states within the NEM, and we have purchased sizable offtake agreements directly from those generators. We then allow our customers who wouldn't normally have an opportunity to purchase an offtake directly from a generator because their volume just simply isn't big enough. And that, believe it or not, you have to be very big to actually get that sort of opportunity. So we purchase a big chunk, and then we'll slice that up into really small volumes to allow smaller customers the opportunity to have that direct relationship with a generator. And then we wrap all that up in a retail solution and manage that whole process for them. So that's one way to do it. Those agreements are generally long term. So to get a good price outcome through what's referred to as a power purchase agreement or a PPA. This industry is full of lots of acronyms. That's generally sort of a 7 to 10 year agreement. So you need to be, pretty comfortable that your business isn't going to change a great deal over that time, and that you're confident of some longevity. It does give you the opportunity to forecast anywhere between sort of 70 and 80% of your energy costs for the next 10 years as well, which is a pretty powerful tool if you're looking at going through a significant growth phase and you want to be able to lock in some costs. So that's one way we can do it. We can also do it through Power Active. And we simply purchase what's called LGCs or large generation certificates that come from renewable generators. And we simply purchase them from the market at the market price, and then we surrender them on your behalf, which means that you've then theoretically purchased your energy through renewable generation sources. That's not probably the most accurate way to do it, but what it does do is it removes LGCs from the market. And the reality is the more demand there is for certificates and the less certificates available, it's just, simple supply and demand. The price for the LGCs goes up, which means that more renewable projects will get delivered on the background that there's an alternative revenue stream for those major businesses that are building very expensive, generation assets.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Thanks for explaining that.
Sorry, could I just add something to that?
Absolutely, please.
Within Flow Power, we do develop projects ourselves. So we own solar projects at Canalpin and Streaky Bay. We're developing one at Berry that's just about to start up. We've got offtake agreements from Clements Gap Wind Farm and the new Gorda Energy Park up around Burra. So, it's really important for our customers if they have sort of part of their sustainability drive is to link to renewable energy. They can actually link their offtake agreements and say, yeah, okay, well, we're taking energy from Berry Solar Farm, for instance, and Clements Gap Wind Farm. So they can point to specific projects, and we can do that either 100% or they can take 20%, 30%, whatever sort of their renewable ambition is.
That's such an important point to make, Stephen. Thank you, because that can really translate into the visitor experience, because our guests are really concerned about sustainability, and visitors are, and it can come part of that storytelling to your guests as well, particularly if you want to link it back to regions within South Australia as well. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Quite interesting.
And it's quite important for the power purchase agreements as well, as opposed to just buying certificates. You can green by buying just generic certificates, but our customers tend to love to have a direct interaction. And plus, if they're buying offtake agreements, they are supporting the development of renewable energy in South Australia as well. So, it's important to point to these assets, but they need offtake agreements to actually get up and be financed and be viable as well. So, it's a very viable and important part of the local industry to support these developments.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's a good point to share. I appreciate that. Now, I encourage our community, if you've got any questions, those are on the call. You don't have to listen to all my questions. Tap into this great knowledge we have through today's session. Feel free to post a question in the chat if you want. But I will continue to ask my last couple of questions before we look to wind this up. Obviously, you shared at the beginning some of the customers that you have worked with. Who have you worked with in the tourism space, and some success stories of what you've been able to provide for businesses in terms of improving their energy outcomes?
Maybe a couple of my customers in the tourism industry are a couple of large hotel chains that have signed up with us. I won't give their names. But again, we started talking to them a couple of years ago. We looked at their profile and entered these power active contracts where we've bought blocks of energy 3 years in advance. And so they've been on those. We've sort of have worked with them, looked at their load profiles. Like I say, they're very flat, very stable. So they've had some excellent pricing outcomes over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. And just a question here from Emily. She did private message me to say her mic is not quite working, but thanks, Emily, for sending through this message. This question: if you're on a commercial agreement and need assistance, can you go, and you can't go to the oh my goodness, that's going to get me that word, ombudsman. Apologies there. Where can you go to help? So, you're on a commercial agreement and you need assistance. What are the other places you can go to seek help?
Probably the first place I'd recommend is engage with your retailer. They do have a responsibility within the market to ensure that they resolve any potential conflicts or issues they have with their customers. There's a variety of different consultants that I'm happy to recommend that could help you in that space, and that also applies to small to medium enterprise customers. We've got a couple of consultants that we've been working with I've been working with some of them for almost 10 years, and I'd certainly recommend using their services. It's not that you can't ever use the ombudsman. It's chosen on a case-by-case basis, and the reality is, if you were potentially misled by a retailer and put onto an agreement that was actually going to cost you more than what it would have cost you to be on a small to medium enterprise agreement, I think there's a very strong chance that the ombudsman would be more than willing to assist you in that inquiry. So it's not necessarily a straight down the line statement, but it is just something that people need to be conscious of and aware of. And look, the reality is, if you're having issues with a retailer, myself or Stephen would be more than happy to assist if we can.
Yeah, great. No, I appreciate that. Before I wind up this session, I want your guys' top tips to take home. I have made a page of notes as well as we talk about this, and I know we're keeping it quite simplistic, but that's important. Are there any key points you guys want to? Oh, we've just got another one come through. Any key points that you both would like to raise before I probe you for your top takeaways and tips or suggestions?
Well, one point that I was thinking about when we talk about load shape and profile and margins, that's already built into your existing, retail contract. So we've got a range of customers. Some like to be really involved and and work hard to lower their price. Others just want to get the monthly bill, see what the price is, and keep it simple, I suppose. So while it might sound difficult, it's no different than a standard retail contract. There's sort of minor difference around the load shape, but that's built into your existing contract as well. So while it might sound a little bit complicated, it's not necessarily that complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially also understanding the language. It's not, obviously it's language that is critical to you both, because you've got years and years of experience, but not being overwhelmed that you're not quite sure of the language. It doesn't need to be as complicated as you might initially think it is.
Yeah, certainly very heavy on acronyms, like I said earlier. Probably another point that's worth mentioning as well, for customers that are new to Flow Power, we provide access to a subscription service called Energy Ready. This gives you direct access to a team of engineers that are going to help you look for opportunities within your organisation at things to become more efficient, things that can potentially help you manipulate your load shape and bring some load from the evening into the middle of the day, and basically just drive a better cost outcome for you. Probably one of the most important things that I believe Flow Power does as a retailer is we engage directly with our customers to try and achieve the best potential outcome. And as Stephen mentioned earlier, we're a fixed margin retailer, so it doesn't matter whether you pay 15 cents or 5 cents to us, we're always going to make the same amount of money. However, if we can get you to a point where you're paying 5 cents instead of 15 cents, you're less likely to leave when your contract's up, which is why we have such a high retention rate for our customers.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
I see there's a question relating to
Looks
chargeable
like,
cars.
is that EVs? Yeah, I had a quick look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can read it out. Thanks, Linda, for writing this question. Speaking of renewables, as businesses, we are looking to reduce our costs and looking at things that use less electricity, like the LED lights and some suggestions you've already provided. However, as we look into the future, we're seeing predictions about the increase of electric vehicles on the road. Not only will obviously this change how people travel, but also the facilities they expect when they arrive at destinations. We're being encouraged to think about installing charging facilities, but concerned that this will just see an increase in our costs. And also the industry won't, then the industry won't keep up. Obviously, there's the demands of the consumer and the traveller, but it's also about these rising costs in business. A really good point, Linda. Here, what are the future sort of forecasts around that?
I think there's a very strong expectation that the uptake of EVs is going to increase significantly in the next sort of 5 years. I think that there's a limited recharging network available at the moment. My expectation there's going to be quite significant funding to go into that from both state and federal government over the next 4 to 5 years. Stephen's done some really interesting work with one of our major customers here in South Australia, in City of Adelaide, looking at ways that they can help get the best cost outcome for the provider of the electrons through managing how much energy goes through the charging unit at given times in the market, and being cognizant of what the underlying price is in the wholesale market. So there's certainly things happening in this space that are really, really important. And Stephen's absolutely right at the front of helping customers extract the best potential value they can from supplying their customers with things like EV charging stations, which I think's, it's a really important thing to do moving forward.
Yeah, and like we said, it's the way of the future. That was a great question, Linda, and perhaps I'd recommend anybody, if they want to pick up on any points, we're providing the contact details for Nick and both Stephen in an email post this session. So feel free to circle and have that offline conversation with either of the gentlemen regarding if it's that point or any other questions you've had that have come off. I've written a couple of my top tips, gents, but before we sign off, what are your last top tips and suggestions for our community in relation to looking at energy efficiency and cost?
Probably say if you're small to medium enterprise, utilise the comparison website. Like I said, I'll share that Excel spreadsheet through, which might be easier.
Thank you.
Certainly less convoluted than the website. And just ask the question of your retailer. Really important that I want to stress that both Stephen and I are pretty parochial South Australians. We're part of this association because we want to see all South Australian businesses punch above their weight and continue to be successful. So we're always here. Even if you're a customer that we don't have a solution for, that doesn't mean you shouldn't reach out to us. Reach out to us. We're happy to help any way we can. And we'll both be at the awards night. So if you see us and you want to chew our ear off, just come and grab us. We're both open to a good yarn. So we'll be around.
Fabulous. Thank you, Nick. Stephen, any last words before I sign off?
Look, reduce your electricity as much as you can. Solar still makes sense. And the price of it has stayed relatively low, and the cost of electricity keeps going up, so the payback keeps coming down. And so just be aware of what you're paying and look ahead. Get onto it early. Don't wait till your contract is just about to roll over. You can lock in well ahead of your current contract and probably get a better outcome.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks. Great point, Stephen. Thank you both, Nick and Stephen, for your time today and expertise. I'm sure our members who are on the call and those who are going to continue to tune in and watch this in their own time will learn something. I certainly have made some notes myself. TKSA, one of our core values is business development, and we bring a range of business development programs. And this is all about, you know, continuing this topic, and our In Conversation series is, it's all about bringing business development opportunities to your business. And we're so grateful to have, like Nick said, and Stephen, they're here to provide, they're the experts in this field. We can't be expected to be professionals in every aspect of our business. So I'd really encourage you to pick up the phone or flick an email to either of the guys and pick their brains. It would be my recommendations. And I'm sure they'll be able to provide some good advice and guidance for you, no matter what the outcome is there. Thank you today, everybody. Appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you all again really soon. And like Nick mentioned, Tourism Awards Gala coming up, though tickets will be going on sale soon. So connect with our community at that event as well. We'll be sending an email out after this with all the resources. Nick's going to share that Excel spreadsheet as well. So yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to either TKSA or Nick and Stephen as well. Thanks all. Have a great day.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah.
See you.
Thanks, Kathy.